So what is a nice, good monthly retirement income? How do you have that stress-free, comfortable lifestyle? That's what I'm gonna address in this video for you right now. All right, so how do you get this good monthly retirement income, like this comfortable retirement income, like something where you can live stress-free, you can pay your bills whenever you want, do what you want, whenever you want, with whomever you want? Isn't that the ultimate goal? Isn't that what you truly want for your life, is have that freedom to be able to do what you want with those you love? That's exactly it. But how do you really get it? How do you know the numbers? How do you calculate all that? How do you know what's real and what's not? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about how you can actually calculate it and what are ways you can do it even better than what your financial advisor would even tell you today. All right, so the first thing you got to understand is, like, what is your goal in retirement? I love quoting Mark Twain. Mark Twain says, "I can help people get whatever they want in life. I just can't find anybody who knows what they want." And isn't that true? Now, I'm probably paraphrasing Mark Twain a little bit. It may not be exact word for all you little fact checkers. You can post in the comments for us below. It helps our algorithms. So go ahead, do it. We love it. But the truth is this, right? Is that so many times I talk with people, I say, well, what kind of retirement income do you want? And you know what they say? I don't know. Well, what should I have? Well, first and foremost, it's not for me to say. If you're trying to rely on a financial advisor to tell you, hey, this is what you should have for retirement income, you're gonna find yourself trapped, locked in, and most likely you'll never get that retirement income they say anyways. So you gotta be careful of that. And so you gotta know what you really want. And the best way to do it is based on today. The hardest thing is you can't project in the future, right? We don't know how much we'll need in the future. So all we can do is today. So what are your goals right now? So for example, when I first became a financial advisor, I remember I was 25 years old. The world was my oyster, or whatever you want to, what kind of phrase you want to use. I don't know if anybody even says the world is your oyster anymore, right? But anyways, so I wanted to be able to be in my 40s, retired, living on $5,000 a month or $60,000 a year. Now, 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, that sounded awesome, right? It sounded amazing to make $5,000 a month. That's very similar to making over $12,000 or so a month today. But remember, when I was basing my goals, I was basing off that $5,000 a month. Now, that's a good start. That's a great start to be at. But then you got to figure out, well, what do I need to actually have? One thing I'll tell you, it's kind of a rule of thumb. This is not guaranteed. Don't quote me on this because it can be better or worse. But a lot of people try to base things on inflation, right? They'll say, oh, inflation is 2%, 3%. Guys, here's the thing. The government does not give you true inflation numbers for what you might really need based on lifestyle. They keep those inflation numbers low on purpose, so they have to keep raising Social Security so fast that they go bankrupt faster. That's why. The government likes to pay as little as they can, and so they've manipulated those inflation numbers over the years. That's why you believe that it might be 3%. But the truth is more like 7 or more percent a year. Now, I would go in somewhere in the middle. Now, you could go extra conservative and say, let's go for 7% inflation rate. I usually go somewhere in between the 3% and the 7%, more like 5%, something that's a little bit more believable for people, or at least gives a little bit more hope, but it may or may not depending on when you get there. And so with that, that means for about every 12 years or so, just plan that your money will have to double. So if you have a 12-year retirement goal, if you say, I want $10,000 a month, after 12 years, you may need to raise that to be $20,000 a month. If you're saying you want to retire in 36 years, for example, right? Well, now it doubles 3 times. So it's not just like 6 times, it's 2 becomes 4, then becomes 8. So if you want to retire in 36 years and you got to double that every 12 years, that means if you want $10,000 a month, that means you need to have $80,000 a month. That's like $1 million a year to be able to get in retirement. I know that sounds ridiculous, but ask anybody from 36 years ago, ask somebody who was actually doing this back in the late 80s, or really the mid 80s, to ask them, hey, what did $1 million feel like back then? And they'll tell you, oh, $1 million was like wealthy, rich. What's $1 million today? There's a lot of middle-class people with $1 million today, right? We got people that got $1 million plus homes, they can barely afford it, and a middle-class wage, right? That's reality today. But back then, I remember I thought $1 million was like you got your own butler, you got to have your own housekeeper like Tony Danza and Who's the Boss, like you were awesome if you could have $1 million. Well, so why do we think it's so ridiculous to think that 36 years from now, literally in the year 2060 or so, depending on when you're watching this video, that all of a sudden, that having $1 million a year coming in would be still like a nice middle-class lifestyle. So just be aware that that's a very big reality for us because inflation has been so big bigger than what we've been told by the media as well as by the government. So as a result, that's why I say, just as a good rule of thumb, every 12 years, which is roughly about a 6% return, type of 6% type of inflation rate. You could go every 15 years and double it. So if you have a 30-year goal, you say, well, double and double, that's 4 times. That might make you feel better. I just like to go for 12 years because in my experience, looking at history, that's been relatively accurate for quality of life, lifestyle type of inflation. Now, once you get those numbers, you can figure it out. So remember, I thought my goal was $5,000 a month would have been awesome. So I remember doing the math back then. I said, all right, if I want $5,000 a month, I need to have, or $60,000 a year, I need to have about $2 million saved up in my mutual funds. And this is the other thing too, is where do you save your money, right? Where do you save it? Like, is it in mutual funds? Because if so, if you're doing traditional retirement planning, you got to plan on living on no more than 3% of your income each year. I know there's people that talk about the 4% rule, which is not even a rule. It was like a calculation created back in 1976. Just so you know, they were taking 1926 and 1976 numbers and saying over these 50 years, if you pull out 4% a year, you should not be running out of money before you die. But 1976 was just a couple years after they took us off the gold standard. Inflation started to accelerate when we no longer had gold backing up our dollar. So inflation's bigger now. That's why you hear more and more people today that are actually being honest with you, saying at most 3%, and that's if you're in retirement. If you're trying to retire early, it's more like 2% a year that you should be pulling off. Well, if I want 3% a year, and this is what I was saying even 20 years ago, right? So I was a little bit ahead of the time from what most people have been saying even today. I said I have to have $2 million because $2 million times 3%, $60,000 a year or $5,000 a month. Well, I did the math. In 20 years, if I wanted to do that by the time I was 45 years old, I would have to save $40,000 a year. I knew that was an aggressive goal. I knew I was gonna have to save and save and save like crazy. So my plan was make a lot of money as a financial advisor, save everything I could, and maybe by the time I'm in my 40s, I could finally retire on that comfortable $5,000 a month. But guess what? In those 20 years, inflation more than doubled. It's more than doubled. Even if it's just tripled, right? Which is probably more accurate. Still, tripling that amount of money over that period of time, that means now I don't need $2 million, I need $6 million. And that means instead of saving $40,000 a year, I gotta save $120,000 a year, like $10,000 a month, so then I can live on $5,000 a month equivalent. Or now it'd be like probably more like $12,000 or so a month, right? Well, that's a big difference. And that's why so many people, when they get to retirement, they realize, do I even have hope? Do I even have enough? This is why my dad, who paid off all of his debt, saved all he could in his 401ks, got the employer match to help with that and everything else. And still I had to tell him, Dad, you're in your 60s. And well, you better hope you die in about 5 or 6 years because you're going to run out of money unless you get government help with Social Security, which he was still too young for at the time. And so I knew, I was like, Dad, you'd be lucky if you could make it 10 years or so on just the money you have today. And so he had to keep working into his 70s for that very reason. So then he didn't have to worry about the 3%. He's like, well, if I just work until I'm almost dead, well, then I can pull out a little bit more than 3% finally, right? That's the reality. And we have so many people facing that today. That's why only about 1.8% of Fidelity accounts have over $1 million in it. And even then, people with $1 million saying, well, if I live on 3%, that's $30,000 a year. That's not enough to live on. How can I actually do it? This is why we talk about passive investments. Because I promised you, I said, what could be a better way of doing it? This is why I left the financial advisor industry. This is why I was done with it, because I realized there's no way I could make my own goals very easily. How could any of the rest of my clients do it unless they just pack away an obscene amount of money? And so if you really want to have a good monthly retirement income, right? If you really want to have something like that, you've got to have good cash flow coming in. This is why I started to wake up in 2006 when I started to learn about alternative investments, Main Street investing, like real estate investing. And I realized, wait, I can lend my money to somebody. They'll pay me 1% a month on my money. So if I lend them $100,000, now I'm making $1,000 a month. What if I have $1 million? Well, instead of making $2,500 a month, and then usually I have to pay taxes because in a 401k or an IRA, instead that $1 million is kicking off $10,000 a month, right? And sometimes they even give me some tax advantages depending on what I'm invested in. That's way better. That's $120,000 a year versus $30,000 a year. Quadruple the money with the same money, but quadruple the income. That's when I left being the accumulation mindset that financial advisors always tell you to set it and forget it, live on less than the interest so you don't run out of money with inflation and everything else. And instead I realized, no, I could actually have monthly income right now. And we've had so many more people that have come to us that were losing hope for a possible good retirement, a good monthly income. They're going from like trying to live in scarcity to living a life of abundance where they have that freedom to pay all their bills and not worry about it, to be able to take time off, to be able to be with their family, retire early, or keep working if they want to, but now they have time freedom so they can go do what they want when they want. And so guys, if you want to learn how to do that better, I just invite you, go to moneyripples.com and figure out, like, go use that passive income calculator just to see how much passive income you could be creating in your situation right now with the money that you have. The answer might just surprise you. So go to moneyripples.com, try our passive income calculator today.